Hello and welcome to our first online talk. Ja, D21, D21 heißt euch herzlich willkommen und ich hoffe, es ist für alle in Ordnung, dass der Talk auf Englisch stattfinden wird. So, welcome everyone to our D21 talk of our current exhibition, Sentient Matter. We are very happy that at least we can take the chance and provide a broad program that we could do online to give you some insights while you are at the moment. Unfortunately, you're not able to join our exhibition inside D21. Yeah, this year has been quite challenging, starting with the lockdown and kind of ending again with the lockdown. But we are very happy that at least we could open the exhibition 1 week ago. And we'll just take the opportunity of everything that's possible, and we want to give you also huge, bigger insight, broader insight into the exhibition online. And yeah, one of our extra program or one of our program are the online talks, and today we are very happy that we can welcome 3 of the artists in our online talk. But before we will welcome them, I would like to welcome Tina and Tuce, the curators of the show, and they are here with me. Welcome, Tina and Tuce. And the 2 of them, they will give you a big insight into the exhibition in the start of our online talk, and then we will go over to get insights right from David, Emmy, and Kerem, who are with us in the talk tonight. And we are very happy that you are available to talk about your work and your work in our show. And then in the end, everybody is welcome to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to answer your question related to the show. So welcome, Tina and Tuce. I'm very happy that you are with me tonight.
Thank you, Sandra, for introducing us. Hello all, I'm Tuce Eren.
And I'm Tina Riberis.
And we would like to introduce the exhibition, so I will quickly share screen. So welcome to the first event of the Sentient Matter group exhibition at D21 in Leipzig. In this online event, we are connecting from 4 different time zones. Tina and I are currently in Berlin. Our guests, Kerem, Ozan, Bayraktar, David, Blandy, and Emmy Mikelson are connecting from Istanbul, London, and New York. Sentient Matter started with a 3-day-long workshop by Unity Godox. The exhibition opened to the public on November 20th, featuring an artist talk by Liz Rosenfeld and Sadie Weiss. The soft opening continued with a performance of Joanna Lindsley, Ghost Dog Rise, which will be soon available on D21's YouTube channel. When we were planning our public program, we already decided to have online events before we got the news that the federal state of Saxony announced a cultural lockdown starting on November 22nd through 12th of December. Therefore, we had to cancel our in-person curatorial tour on December 11th. Instead, we will prepare a video documentation of our curatorial tour in the second half of December. Lastly, our online program will end with an artist talk by Elma Steniz and lecture performances by Diana Barquera Perez and artist duo Unity Godox. Before we give the floor or our screen to our artist, we would like to introduce our exhibition concept and share some of the images from the exhibition. Sentient Matter is conceptualized as a response to annual theme of D21, human nature. Tina and I were inspired by scholars and art authors like Ursula Le Guin, Donna Haraway, Samuel Opperman, and Timothy Morton. Since the late 20th century, social sciences have challenged our understanding of human nature, loosened the divide between human and what we are accustomed to calling nature, and proven that there is a life and agency beyond the biological world the world as we know it. Based on the concept of Sentient Matter by Serenella Iovino and Serpil Opperman, as well as Subjectified Universe by Ursula Le Guin, research-based group exhibition Sentient Matter features 10 artistic positions by Diana Barquera Perez, Kerem Ozan Bayraktar, David Blandy, Emma Stenis, Unity Goldox, Joanna Lindsley, Emmy Mikelson, Tina Ribaritz, Liz Rosenfeld, and Sadie Weiss. As part of an experimental video series, Emmy Mickelson's Night of the Red Sky depicts a speculative world with a rich and turbulent atmosphere that supports strange glimpses of life. It is a world that has only graduation of difference from our world, familiar one. There is a gravity, weather patterns, shifting light, liquid and solid ground, but this world gives no privilege nor primacy to a human subject. Tina Ribaritz is a silent and caring spectator of more than human worlds through the lens of her camera. In her The Other Planet series, she shares fragments of her immersive experience in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest, a calm and chaotic place in its own manner, which is also one of the most vulnerable places on Earth. Sadie Weiss' Quantum Jelly is an installation inspired by the eclipsing phenomenon of quantum computing and nature's steady prevail through the spiral of technology. In observing one of those odd magical metal machines called quantum computers, one could say that evaluate a queerly organic aesthetic, much like that of a sea creature. Quantum Jelly is a crystallized hybrid of this enigmatic computer and its most non-obvious guise, the ambiguous jellyfish. Approaching questions regarding desire in the face of environmental degeneration and sustainable resources, Rosenfeld's video installation, no title, Reflections, Dreams, and Premonitions, transforms the space into a conceptual fallout shelter, offering a journey across the future of flesh, holes, crystals, and foxes. The installation is a sketch 2D rendering of a forthcoming experimental immersive film made for a planetarium. The final work is slated in premiere in 2022. In the exhibition, we feature 2 videos of David Blandy, tutorial, how to make a short video about extinction, and how to fly. David Blandy creates step-by-step tutorials showing the viewer how to make a short video using just the internet, a computer, and a video editing software programs, referencing to popular phenomenon of YouTube tutorials. Disarmingly self-aware, his voice guides the audience through apocalyptic scenarios, natural disasters, and hypnotic mediation in the form of cormorant avatar gliding through the air. Artist duo Hunuti Goldok's Ethera is a VR and video installation, which is based on the workshop that took place in July in D21. The artistic research focuses on the water ecologies around Leipzig, especially Neuseeland, an artificial waterland that old open cast mines have been filled with water. The installation demonstrates an architecture and reenactment of entangled landscapes that reflect on the ongoing human desire to shape and remake nature. By re-articulating matter and material, the work depicts violent ecological interventions and manipulations while contemplating what nature was, is, and can be. Kerem Ozan Bayraktar's Phases of Nyx is an animation that is created with the inspiration from the chaotic rotations of the dwarf planet Pluto's satellite called Nyx. The video in the exhibition is accompanied by a Nyctian calendar, a calendar that is similar to the ones that show the phases of Earth's moon, but is an unfunctional one due to the Nyx chaotic rotations. Elmasden is made to be seen borrows the features and conceptual roots from advertisements, especially those for luxury goods. In the video, the advertised products is a true unsellable thing, which is, in this case, the green natural beauty of Sri Lanka. Dennis focuses on how advertising has been a main tool of manipulation through the use of language and play with the ways that nature becomes a popular element in commercials today. Diana Barquera Perez shows the two works in the exhibition space under the title of If You Think You Can Grasp Me, Think Again, focuses on the transformation of a protected wetlands area in Costa Rica. Although it has great environmental importance, the place is being shrunk and transformed by multiple external aggression. Banana, palm oil, rice, and pineapple plantations are expanding the agricultural area, filling the land and the water with pesticides, fertilizers, and polluted sediments. Using soil, fruit carcasses, and other materials from the plantations and the wetlands, the artist built objects called conglomerates, whose shape mimics the plot of land from the bordering plantations. These conglomerates are placed on paper and regularly dosed with different liquids, such as pesticides, water, and juice, products color traces of the substances and slowly disintegrating the conglomerates. Joanna Linsley's Les Arcadia is an audio work in 4 episodes. This weird sonic fiction takes the form of a picaresque about ordinary secret knowledge and a park that is turning into a zone. The narrative relates a protagonist semi or ultra-rational road through a city park in counterpoint with the story of a starving seagull who finds itself in the Scottish Highlands surviving on roadkill. Lesser Arcadia occupies pockets and margins where alternative possibilities are conceivable but also struggle to be realized, where nothing is hidden but everything is obscure. The audio work is accompanied by a live performance at the opening, Ghost Dog Rise, an attempt to summon the spirit of a park zone even as it resists this symbolic burden. The digital version of the exhibition will be available on D21's website soon. And thank you for listening this introduction. And now I would like to give the floor to Tina Ribaritz.
Thank you, Tuta. So we are now coming to the first artist talk of the evening. Just a reminder, we will have a Q&A after all the 3 talks are finished. So feel free to post questions already now in the comments. We will get back to them later on. As our first speaker, I want to introduce David Blandy. Yes, hello, David. Hi. I just wanted to say some quick words about your practice, and then I'll let you speak about your work. David Blandy is joining us today from Brighton in the UK. He works in Brighton and London. His artistic practice is in medias of video, installation, performance. He has a gaming art practice and works with sound and has recently co-written a graphic novel. I'm reading a very short quote you will know, probably. David Blandy has established his terrain through a series of investigations into the cultural forces that inform and influence him in recent works examining human consciousness within a digital world. Also, collaborating is a central part of his practice, such as the year-long collaboration with artist Laria Chiampong. And David will be speaking about the 2 videos he's showing in Sentient Matter. The first one, How to Fly, from 2020, and the second one, Tutorial, How to Make a Short Video About Extinction, from 2014. Yeah, and now I think I would give the room to David.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, too. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. The tutorial series came out of, I suppose, a moment of crisis, thinking I'm making these videos, and it feels like they're becoming formulaic. And I saw a propensity in video art at that time. I'm going to talk about Extinction first, because that was the first one. It was in 2014. A propensity at the time of video art that was essentially taking stuff from kind of Wikipedia entries and turning those into essay films. So I thought, well, if this is sort of a practice that's going on now, why not turn that kind of process into an artwork? At the same time, I was very interested in the intimacy of the YouTube tutorial. I'd experienced YouTube tutorials a lot. I had been learning how to create various things in things like Adobe After Effects, in 3D programs, in Photoshop, in Premiere, all sorts of video and manipulation programs, essentially from YouTube. So, you know, you can look up the all the manuals and everything, but often the easiest way to get the simple answer you need is to go onto YouTube and say, you know, how do I make a background transparent? Or how do I make a film where I have these sorts of transitions? So I thought, well, why not make how to make a short video about extinction, how to make video art, essentially, how to make an essay video. And so, yeah, the film becomes this mixture of the intro, which is very kind of, is made to feel very ad hoc, very improvised, as though I'm just talking to one person. It has that, yeah, that intimacy that a lot of YouTube tutorials have, where people start kind of discussing their lives, or you're actually being taught this very elaborate special effect by what sounds like a 12-year-old boy, and it's kind of, you take it on board and just institute this technique, and then hey presto, you have the thing. So for me, this was an exercise in After Effects, the program that I was just getting into, and I thought, so that's a good space to start. And then, yeah, I thought of a theme, which was, yeah, extinction. So what are all, how are all the ways that the world could end? And I found a series of scripts online through, they were kind of TED Talks, that sort of thing. TED Talks have an online transcription of the whole thing. So kind of took that and then kind of put them all together into this final film. But I wanted there to be that real kind of sliding elision between this sort of very very casual, very intimate, as though I'm just talking to you in a room sort of voice, into something far more kind of authorial and kind of like the voice of sort of a documentary, and what that simple switch does. So in some ways it's a kind of a film that deconstructs itself, but it's also a kind of an experiment in kind of performance to video, I guess, going between these two different registers of voice, using both improvised and found script, and kind of mashing it all together. And it ended up with this film, the Extinction film. And I thought that as a kind of structure, it was interesting. I'll show some clips from it. Sorry. Share. Where is it? Here we go. So here you see some clips from, these are just some stills from the film. So this is this is actually a still from a YouTube video which is showing you how to make kind of a vision of the end of the world. You can see the transparency in the background. They've taken a city scene and then kind of created this this crack in the middle of the floor, added a texture of rock, put on a kind of cracked texture all over the floor. It doesn't look terribly convincing, but it's the kind of, yeah, in the video you see this moving through, it being constructed. And then there are a series of 3D renders of what the end of the world might look like, things like meteorites hitting the planet. And then some really quite kind of, yeah, they look like kind of experiments in using different bits of After Effects. So you'd have kind of various animated elements, a kind of pseudo shaky camera. Looks like, yeah, something very hokey, but I kind of liked it. And then, yeah, this is actually a Photoshop tutorial where they're kind of bringing in all these different elements in fast forward, and you can kind of watch the whole process of this meteorite coming in and all this stuff. And yeah, I kind of sat on that for a while, that process, and then ended up making a whole series of works using this format. There's one called a short video about ideas, which is kind of looking at where ideas come from, and then there's how to fly, and now there's and how to live. And How to Fly is the other film that's in this exhibition. How to Fly was, in a way, a reaction to a lockdown, so it's quite apt for today. And it was a reaction to only being able to get out of the house for about an hour a day, and then trying to kind of absorb as much nature as possible during that time. And then those kind of other times that you find the sublime in, I don't know, books that you're reading, but also in the video games that you're playing, or the films that you're watching. And I've been doing a lot of work in Grand Theft Auto 5, especially in my collaboration with Larry at Chimpong, which has been going on for the last 8 years. We've made a few films using that as a space to explore, as kind of a found object space to inhabit. And yeah, I thought to kind of deconstruct that process could be quite fun. So it was taking that idea of how to make a short video inside Grand Theft Auto. So you have to kind of choose your avatar, choose the space that's in, make the camera moves, and then finally put it all together into yeah, a film. And the film would be this sort of meditation on I guess this, yeah, spirituality, on becoming at one with yourself and your body in this space, taking on the spiritual significance of the cormorant, of flying, of the liminality of this space, at the same time as knowing, I don't know, these are all things that I find quite hard to address in a direct way. So it gave me using this kind of trope of the constructed space gave me a possibility to enter into this in a both sincerely but also in a knowing way, I guess. So yeah, here are some shots of the cormorant flying through this canyon in Grand Theft Auto 5, and then out into the water. Yeah, a lot of the script from the end was taken from websites like this, sort of around tarot and meanings of spiritual meanings of animals. And then, yeah, you see that the whole, the film reveals itself through, as you're listening to me talk, you see a bit of the script, which is kind of repeating some of the stuff that I'm saying at the same time. So it has that kind of self-referentiality. And I think that's probably all I need to say about these films. I mean, yeah, they're on the website. They're on Vimeo. So please do take the time to check them out. I know how tricky it is to watch video through Zoom. So I think it's probably best to watch it outside of a talk like this. But yeah, thank you very much. And I believe it's Emmy next.
Thank you, David. That was super interesting. I've written down already a couple of questions for later, but now I want to like seamlessly move to our next speaker, Emmy Mikelson. Hi, Emmy. I again will have a very brief introduction. So Emmy Mikelson is joining us from New York City today. She's an interdisciplinary artist working in video, painting, and drawing. She furthermore has an extensive curatorial practice as well. And she has published a range of texts and co-authored the publication And Another Thing, Non-Anthropocentrism and Art. She will talk about her video, Night of the Red Sky from 2016, that she's showing in our exhibition. And for this, I want to share a short quote she shared with us, actually, from The Drowned World, from G.J. Ballard, from 1962. Yes. He was moving backwards through the emergent past, through a succession of ever stranger landscapes, centered upon the lagoon, each of which seemed to represent one of its own spinal levels. I think this is giving the floor to Emmy now.
Thank you. So I guess what I wanted to do was just speak a little bit about some of the influences behind the video that's included in the show. And just very broadly speaking, my work is influenced by sci-fi and horror cinema from the 1940s and 50s, and the genre of Gothic literature. And I feel like for many of us, there's lots of things that influence and factor into each project you're working on, but those two main areas seem to always kind of come into the work. So first, with science fiction, it's interesting because it starts with some kernel of fact, something known to us to be true. And then it takes it and gradually kind of shifts it into a different context. And it's the narrative drive. The narrative drive there is to move through numerous gradations, moving us from our known reality into a different one. And what's interesting with sci-fi is that it's not wholly different. It's not a completely newly constructed reality because it's always based on that one, kernel of truth or fact that we're familiar with. So it ends up being more of kind of these strange shadows cast from our known world. And in particular, I'm interested in how non-human elements can become amplified and take on that horrifying presence. So for example, a really common one is, amorphous things. Blobby amorphous things are common vehicles for the horrific, because these things don't present us with a clear boundary between us and them. They don't neatly fit into a category. So, already by default, they situate us in a place of anxiety. And so from 1950s British sci-fi, there's two favorite examples I have of this sort of blobness. And it's X, the Unknown, and The Crawling Eye. And both of these films are largely fueled by Cold War anxiety and a preoccupation with radiation. So just super briefly, in X, the Unknown, you have this amorphous oozing blob that emerges from a crack in the earth and then proceeds to mysteriously scorch people throughout the show. And then in The Crawling Eye, there is this mysterious stationary cloud in the mountains that is also radioactive and lethal. So I like these two examples because they capture a common theme within this genre. There's always the recurrence of blobs and fogs and mists and stuff. But there's also a humor in them, because we're talking about radiation, but we're still watching this through the lens of a low budget B movie. So it's kind of hard to get away from the humor that gets embedded in that. And so then secondly, when it comes to Gothic literature, this theme of the amorphous blob continues. So speaking about Gothic literature, obviously it's a genre that persists, but specifically as it began in late 18th century and early 19th century. So within these stories, there's the amplification of natural elements. Atmospheric conditions such as, again, fog and mist are protagonists in and of themselves. And there's obviously a lot more to talk about within Gothic literature, but I just want to point out that kind of main overarching theme is something really important to me, is that, again, you can take something as simple as a cloud that maybe mysteriously appears in the same place every night, or, takes the same trajectory or path every night, and that becomes such a huge narrative focus. So ultimately, though, in both of these genres of 1950s sci-fi and Gothic literature, the humans largely prevail at the end. But what's interesting is that as we move through those narratives, there is this elevation and expansion of the natural world, and then a diminishing and weakening of the human subject. And that's the place where I was coming from when I made the video Night of the Red Sky, and subsequently a lot of my work. So Night of the Red Sky is part of a series of short videos that attempts to put together a kind of like fractured narrative that centers around non-human movements and energies, and to depict a space that's, hovers between that known, unknown, strange, familiar kind of zone. And I think without the presence of a human subject, I think that these environments can be seen as both, like, it's either dystopic or utopic, maybe simultaneously they're both, maybe they, it feels like maybe it can exist on a spectrum, just depends on how you're viewing it. And going back to the humor that you find in 1950s sci-fi, the soundscapes that I create for the videos, I think also allow them to play with humor, some more so than others. And then I think this also just continues to lend itself to the ambiguity of, are these spaces, depicting something dystopic or utopic? And I think David has a good point that it's hard to share a video through Zoom, but I'm gonna try to see if you can kind of get some of the sense of it and the sound. So Sandra, if it's possible to screen share a clip starting at 40 seconds.
All right.
Thank you. So hopefully you're able to get some sense of that. So when it came to constructing the sets for these videos, I needed a place to start for, like, what would this landscape look like? So I was influenced by the biodiversity and landscape of tepuis in South America, specifically Mount Roraima in Venezuela. And that was like largely part in due in part to the fact that it's suggested that Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, that was like the inspiration behind the setting for it. So I liked, of course, like that connection back to like sci-fi. So just briefly about tepuis, these tabletop mountains can reach up to like 600 meters straight up with extremely steep cliffs. And the tops sit up above the clouds. So they're like floating islands in the sky. So I like that relationship again to this sort of like a mist or a fog, and this being like a space that's like elevated up out of that. And so because of how inaccessible they are, the biodiversity is extremely unique and often endemic to just one location. So this seemed like a good kind of place to start to gather information. So I just tried to find out as much as I could about the flora and the fauna there, the colors, the atmospheric conditions, to help starting to make decisions about how these landscapes in my video would work. And then something else that was interesting to me about that was just the incredible scale shift that happens when you're looking to something like this, massive, huge mountain, and it's getting then translated back into this very small set. And my videos are done in just like 4-liter aquariums. So they're like aquatic spaces that I'm using to kind of create these atmospheres. So that insane scale shift seemed really important to me, because it is a goal in the videos to try and find something that exists between depicting something very vast, like at some point maybe it looks like a lunar landscape, and then also moving to the other side that maybe it feels like extremely microbial. And with the aquariums, when I first started, and I think Night of the Red Sky is one of the earlier ones. So these aquarium sets did start very much as artifice and, just representations of maybe boulders and rocks or sandstorms using various pigments that are mixed into the water mixtures. But eventually I did start to inadvertently grow bacteria after the continued use, because I would just use the same aquarium again and again. So the videos did start to actually exist at 2 different levels of what was visible to the eye and what was not. So that existing at 2 scales became very real. And I really liked that about how the project evolved that way. And I was actually going to end on the quote that Tina already shared, because it is a very influential to this video series. J.G. Ballard's The Drowned World was a book I was reading as I was making these. And it was, I think, also probably pretty influential to me figuring out that the way I wanted to construct these video sets was through liquid. I didn't want to try and if I was going to depict a mountain or a hard, terrain, I didn't want to actually start with a hard terrain. I wanted to somehow start with liquid to make that feel solid. And I think that helps to kind of get that slippage between the scale of the space, like what's actually happening in it. I feel like you get that kind of the mystery of the sort of like the fog, the cloud blob kind of stuff. So I'll just read it again one more quick time. So he was moving backwards through the emergent past, through a succession of ever stranger landscapes centered upon the lagoon, each of which seemed to represent one of his own spinal levels. And I like this quote because even though it is coming from a human perspective and a human voice, the characters in this novel, increasingly become consumed by this lagoon and this jungle that they're surrounded in, or that surrounds them. So they almost just like one by one melt and dissolve into the landscape, which points to them just being, they're a small part. They're not the beginning, they're not the end. They're just also another character mixed up into the soup. And I think that idea is very, that very much ties into my thinking about how these videos are constructed and how you make decisions about representing non-human things versus human subjects. But I think I can leave it there then and pass it on.
Thank you, Emmy. And sorry for already reading out the quote before you could
No,
do
it's perfect. It's bookended, so that's even better.
And I think it's such a beautiful quote. I think it's like totally good to just hear it twice. So yeah, thank you. I will just move on to our next speaker now, which is Kerem Ozan Bayraktar. Hi, Kerem. Hi. So Kerem is joining us from Istanbul today. He works with video installation. He mainly uses animation, 3D computer visualizations, models, texts, and graphics, but more and more also everyday objects. He focuses on the behavior of natural and artificial systems, their occlusion points, boundaries, collapses, mutations, and how we make sense of them. He works in a wide research area ranging from planet morphologists to urban plants. Apart from his exhibition practice, Kerem also regularly is holding workshops, lectures, and publishing texts and essays. And he will be speaking today about his work, like video, installation work, and in poster version, different versions of his work, Phases of Nix from 2018-19. So, Kerem, you want to take over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Maybe I just directly share the screen so that it covers my digital anxiety. I choose this image. I just inspired by Emmy's artwork, so I thought it would be nice to talk while this is on background. So I think my main problem is like why there are things out there. Like if we imagine the world like a sand and like all the things made from the same material, and I am curious about how things emerge from this same material relationships. And so basically my main question is very philosophical. It's like the objecthood, like why there are objects and how they differ from each other and how they became individuated. And yeah, the emergence is an important concept here, like from material relationships, complex things emerge. And there, I think we should think about the concept of change, why things are changing. And I'm not asking these questions only in a scientific or philosophical way, also in an artistic way. And maybe I show few videos before going into my project in the exhibition. So I made lots of videos about the, let's say, unpredictable behaviors of things, even with simple things like with toys. Let's see. Or like this video. And one very old video. So yes, I think I asked too much questions about these natural movements. And in one of my show in 2000, to 2015, I was making this random asteroids. I was interested with like things that out of the solar system, things that we don't give any interest, you know, just bunch of stones. Then, yes, maybe this is already silent, so I can talk in the background. So this one is it's a 3D model. Actually, it's not a proper visualization. Actually, there are some photos. Let me show you. This is the real photo of this satellite. I think it's the only photo of it because it's very small, and yeah, you cannot see the back side of it. So we just imagined while we are modeling. And let me show you a simulation of it. Yep. So this is a Plutonian system, Kerem system. They're the main planets, the dwarf planets, and this is the satellite that I am interested in. As you can see, this system is not very stable because the Pluto and Kerem are there together. Their center point is out of Pluto, is not in the center of the Pluto. So this causes like lots of chaotic behavior. So that's the reason this satellite tumbles chaotically. So you cannot guess the next moment, like what's gonna happen next. And I wanted to make a video of it, and I was thinking like how do I make, if something is chaotical, how can I make an animation? Because you know, animation is all about the time. Like you are putting keyframes in a traditional animation. You have to know what's gonna happen next. Then I started to ask a question about direction of the time. Like, I mean, if I reverse this video, we cannot understand if the direction of time in any way. Like, so because we don't have any reference point. And then it made me think about, we understand that time passes because things acts or behave in a certain way. Then to make this video, I thought it will be logical to make a like a very simple random formula. This is like very basic. This is my satellite mix. You know, it goes in this way. And here the formula says like rotate in a kind of chaotic way. If you call it chaos, I don't know. I just put some noise. So depending on the noise, it moves, you know, in an unpredictable way. Then I recorded the video. So it's still a recording. It's not a live simulation, but maybe in the future I do that. And then I thought it would be nice to make a calendar, like you know, there is this moon calendars that we see in the bookshops or like in science stores. I thought this one is also a moon, and let's make a moon calendar. But this calendar doesn't make any sense because, you know, we cannot use it. I mean, the time is changing so fast, and it doesn't make any sense for us. So to make a calendar, what I did is I made this model. Like this is Pluto, and this is like my virtual camera pointed towards to satellite, and I recorded each phase, then made this calendar, and now it's a poster that you can, like this one. This one is from the old show. There is a similar one in the exhibition. So I thought it would be nice that people take it and put as a poster in their house. What else I can say? Yeah, I think that's it. Maybe we can talk a bit about in the question part, if it's fine for you.
Thank you, Kerem.
Thank you.
Thank you, actually, all of you. Maybe you want to turn on your videos now. Thank you. Hello. And yeah, I mean, I think we can just ease into the Q&A part of the evening. And I think if it's okay, I would like to start with a question that I actually have, or like it's more like an open question or a comment I had, that I was very clearly all of your three works have some sci-fi elements in very different ways, and like instantly I had to think about this very popular word of world building that's being used quite a lot at the moment, but I feel like it applies to actually all three of you in very different ways. And yeah, I was just like wanted to throw it into the room, see if it makes sense for you, if you have something to say about it.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. Why not? World building has become, I don't know, I think it's been central to my practice since forever, just because ever since I started lip syncing to things and kind of realizing that the character on screen was like a fiction, it's not a me. And so you kind of realize it's, you know, this is the character that lip syncs to things. That becomes then these alter egos that enter into the world. And it becomes like, yeah, you're kind of world building around a kind of building a fiction into a perceived reality, but showing that perceived reality is in flux and can be changed by our actions. And I guess that's kind of the subtext of all my work, really, is that as things are isn't how it has to be. So, you know, things can change. One can change oneself. One can change the world, and that's kind of the center of it. I've got, yeah, as well as that kind of those meta fictions that happen around things like, and I say the work with Larry, where we kind of become these alter egos in another space that are searching for Frantz Fanon, or in the work Child of the Atom, where kind of I've become sort of the atom bomb itself that destroys Hiroshima and allows me to exist because of my grandfather's existence and surviving the camps as a prisoner of war. Recently I've been working with games, as you say, with tabletop role play games, and creating, and it's all about world building, but it's about world building with the group that you're actually with at that time. So it's like, you know, a world exists, but then you kind of build into it and it becomes a shared virtual experience, but just a virtual experience in your heads. And I think, yeah, this is sort of a kind of quite interesting space to work in as an artist. But yeah, Emmy, Kerem, did you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I like that book of Nelson Goodman, Ways of World Making, he says, I think. And there he says, how do we build worlds we are building worlds from other worlds. That I like it a lot. So, which means that there is no one single world, and there are many worlds, and each of them are equally real. I think even the imaginary ones, like the artist does, and also like a world in a book is also as real as our physical living world. And I think we mix them and create new things with that worlds. Yeah, I like this concept a lot.
Yeah, I think if I think about world building in relationship to my practice, I think I get a little tripped up by it a little bit, because I think I don't want to situate myself in this role of like being the being that's making the world, because I feel like that starts to get antithetical to some of the more like non-anthropocentric like focuses I try to stay with. But I don't think you can get away from it, because like there still is that moment of getting the ball rolling. Maybe there still is like maybe being like world building, having that catalytic start, that beginning moment, and then figuring out how to step back and let it just start flowing and going and see what happens. But yeah, I feel like it's probably hard to totally step away from that idea. It's more just like how the different ways in which it can play out and the different ways in which it can last so long or maybe end abruptly.
It's
I
really
think it's I understand you, like this word making. It seems like there's this active subject and passive object relationships, but I still think even we are making, we are in a kind of symbiotic relationship with the things. I mean, we are objects too, so we are not like forcing things into the shape. And so I think for me, world making is a kind of interaction. Is not like a sculpting. I just want to say this.
Yeah, and I think it's very much watching the worlds emerge. Yes, you act as a catalyst for this process in some ways by kind of positing an idea through maybe an artwork or maybe through a sentence, I don't know. But then, you know, it becomes something different as the work kind of becomes, because I never feel like I have very much control over the artwork, really. You know, you I guess that's why I'm so interested in things like found objects or kind of working collaboratively, etc. It's sort of, it's allowing a place where this thing can kind of happen, and then you sort of frame it in a way, and then you say, yes, this is done, and then like it keeps being made in the minds of the people who watch it. Whatever.
like maybe also quite literally, as Emmy talked about the bacteria in her aquarium, like actually, like, I don't know, just that was something I didn't know before, which was, I think, like a really somehow like almost like a metaphor for world building somehow. Yeah.
But I was thinking the same thing when Kerem started the presentation. I was already thinking, okay, there's this very strong relationship between Emmy's and then Kerem's practice to show this otherworldly, but actually here earthly beings and organisms in their artistic practice. And therefore, I find it really fascinating to just having this combination in this talk. And but I have a question for David. When you were talking about your project in 2014, Extinction, and when you were describing the project, I realized also how the concept of extinction becomes so a hot topic in the mainstream cultural institutions exact that time. So that maybe it was a intentional or unintentional sarcastic response, because I remember Serpentine had this like a 3-day-long extinction events, which also took place, I think, end of 2014. So what was your feeling when you were thinking and working on this project within that climate, in the zeitgeist, let's say?
Well, it was actually a piece for that Serpentine marathon.
Okay.
So
maybe I didn't forget it.
Yeah, it was kind of, I guess it was a kind of reaction to that. But it was also, yeah, I wanted to make it as much about the process as about the subject in a weird way. And the subject is ever present in my mind. I mean, I remember growing up thinking that, you know, we would die fried in a nuclear explosion any day, like, and then of course the wall came down, and it felt like maybe that wasn't going to happen tomorrow. But then, you know, the last couple of years have shown us that anything is possible at any time, and really kind of the so-called comfort of Western Europe is just, you know, it's just one element of the world, and there's constant disasters and extinctions and genocide everywhere all the time. It's just where we choose to focus. So yeah, I mean, you know, the kind of merry-go-round of curatorial subject is just a thing, isn't it? It's a fashion, and you know, I'm really glad that it's got onto things like sci-fi, Ursula Le Guin, like, you know, all these things that I've been fascinated with for years around now. But it's just, you know, it's happening.
We're part of that too.
Yeah. But like I say, I'm glad.
I'm actually, I have another question to you, Kerem. Not a question, but it's an interesting comment that when you were showing your process, how you actually had this virtual camera of recording the phases of Nyx from the perspective of Pluto. So, and then how you are addressing the understanding of time and the notion of time. Because yes, I was also thinking how we understand the time based on how Earth spins around itself or around the sun. So that's how we understand the time. So it was interesting to have this alienation moment when you look at the spinning satellite that just makes you dizzy. Of course, unfortunately, we cannot have it from the screen. You really need to have this like an immersive feeling in an installation room. But at the same time, it just makes you very uncomfortable of the notion of time and then how it is very human oriented. So it's not a question, it's more like a comment that I wanted to share again, this like what time means, and then how do we understand the notion of time. And then of course, it's just gonna be a little bit kitschy of this like a relativity of the time, of course, but so it was an interesting approach to understand the notions of seasons also. I mean, so we don't have seasons in that calendar. It's just we don't understand what month means, day means. So it's just also very weird.
If I can interject here, like when we're talking about the calendar, like my thought right now was like also like, who's this calendar for? Yeah, and not that it's not for no one. I thought, but this kind of idea to think about different viewers, different spectators, different usage of things. I don't know. That seems really important for me, as well in the calendar, but also in Emmy's and David's works. Yeah.
I just want to hop onto that with the phases of Nick's calendar. I also really loved how it felt like in one way this kind of embracing chaos, because you're like going through all this effort to create phases out of randomness, from what I understand. Like there's no pattern, therefore the idea of a phase just is meaningless. It doesn't make any sense in that context in a random system. But I love that it's so like methodically taking the time to render, shoot it, lay it all out, but it's just sort of knowing that there is no pattern to find, and yet you've laid out these phases. So yeah, I really enjoyed that piece.
Emmy, when you are creating your sets, you said aquarium. So how long does it take to actually create your little world to start shooting?
Well, it's cumulative, and it's happened in several phases. Like when the very first videos, you're starting with a clean tank of just like water and mineral oil and whatever various pigments I'm adding. And so those earlier videos take longer. There's a lot more like, I don't know. I mean, there's like several hours of footage that again gets whittled down into like 4 to 6 minutes. But then once the tank gets dirtier and dirtier and more life is literally starting in it, like I think maybe I just need 60 minutes of really great footage that I can then go down into like edit down to like 6 minutes. And so it just varies. And then at a certain point, the tanks get, speaking of like a symbiotic relationship, the tanks get too unhealthy to be in my world. And so then I need to flush them. And then I have to start all over again. But so, yeah, it's this different pattern. Like it's time is really long at the beginning, and then it slowly shortens the more lively the thing gets.
Do you actually, because I know you have worked with underwater cameras, is this something you also use for those videos, or is it really shot from outside?
It's both. It's like a little bit of both. There's like outside shots, and then I also sync cameras like into it. Yeah, so it's like it's a mixture because it's all shot mostly with like a macro lens from the outside, so it's like highly magnified. But if I did everything from the outside, there's too many little things from the outside world that give away the illusion. So it's good to also like sync just like a 4K camera into it, because it's a little fuzzier and blurrier when it's inside. So there's a different kind of atmospheric quality. But I think the shift between something hyper focused and then a little bit blurry makes the whole world a little more believable. Just as like one anecdotal thing, if I shoot from the outside, there's been several times I had a cat at the time, and I'd have this like really, really good illusionistic, like lunar landscape, something crazy happening. And then you can clearly discern a cat hair float right through the scene. And it just like busts the scale, obviously. So then it's like, okay, I have to scrap all of that.
A nice companionship and collaboration with the other than human participation. Do you have any other questions to each other? Actually, we are the ones who are asking questions, but actually we want to have it more as a kind of a conversation.
You also don't have to.
I have one for David, just because I'm curious, since you work so much with like you talk about like looking at YouTube tutorials and how that factors into your work. We were talking about extinction too, like did you notice a time where this idea of like it feels like doing YouTube videos for how to make something look like it's blowing up, burning, chaotic, like end of days? That feels like there must have been a moment when that really became like a genre onto itself. Like, please show me how to make it look like the world ended. Like just with like the increase in like 3D modeling software and that being more readily accessible, like, did you notice this moment where that like those videos really increased?
I don't think I noticed that moment, but I know it's definitely a thing. Like it feels like one of the tropes, you know, people getting into Blender initially, it's like kind of, you know, how do I make a ball? How do I make a ball bounce? How do I make the end of the world? You know, it's like that. That's a kind of natural sort of progression. Yeah, there's sort of a dystopian future aesthetic, which is quite common to just 3D renders in general. Like if you go onto, I know I'm using Unreal Engine quite a lot at the moment, and if you go onto the Unreal Engine store, like there's so many packs for sort of, I don't know, cyberpunk city or yeah, kind of broken urban environment or something like, or yeah, I think and there's been quite a lot recently because of things like Last of Us. Like there's certain video games which have that trope of the overgrown city and things like that. So, and that feels like, and I think maybe that goes hand in hand with actual increases in processing power, because people are able to actually have lots of leaves now. Like back when Half-Life 2 or something was big, like it wasn't really possible to have that much vegetation and it still run at a decent like rate. So it's a bit like how Pixar films, like they're kind of dominated by a particular kind of process. Like Monsters Inc. came out of the fact they could do fur now. So like it's a film about fur. and Toy Story, came because they knew that they couldn't do flesh very well, but it mimicked kind of plastic really well. So let's make a film about plastic toys. So it's sort of, it's those sorts of, like, the technology in kind of creating the subject matter, I think is definitely a thing. And it does feel like in the last couple of years, I mean, especially since the pandemic, that sort of the post kind of cataclysm, post sort of apocalypse space is like a dominant aesthetic, let's say. But yeah.
Well, why do you think people like that? Because if you think like it's the end of the world, I mean, we should be sad, but we really enjoy that. And I never understand the motivation behind it.
I think it, because it feels, I think there's a sort of a seductive, logical sense about it. It's like, eventually this will happen, because it seems like everything's set up for it to happen. It just hasn't quite happened yet. And then kind of pseudo-apocalyptic things. I mean, we've been living through the plot of La Jetée at the moment, haven't we? So it's like, these sort of sci-fi elements are creeping into everyday existence, or not creeping into, like bouldering into like a huge elephant. But it's like, I think we kind of want to see that next stage, but why is it kind of, it feels like a kind of an end point of capitalism, doesn't it? It's like kind of all the resources are used up, and what have you got left? It's sort of like a scorched earth, and all these kind of huge edifices are now crumbling, and we've got to survive somehow in this horrific post-industrial kind of wasteland. But yeah, I think that kind of will to survive, I think it's sort of facing a nightmare in a way, maybe. Like we like to do that. So it's kind of the death drive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think very much it's like an exposure therapy. You're like relieving anxiety by like representing it yourself and taking control of that representation.
Yeah, I mean, look at the popularity of things like Walking Dead, or even Stranger Things. Like there's kind of, there's sort of, there is a certain retro aesthetic to it as well. I think it's often sort of, I don't know, just thinking about the kind of the shopping malls and stuff of Day of the Dead or something. It's like it's all, it's weird how it's sort of, yeah, go on.
Yeah, I just thought that, like, in the romantic period, people had nostalgia about the past, before the industrial revolution. Now we are doing the opposite for the future, maybe.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
I think what's also happening, I have to mention, because we're actually talking about your 2014 video now, and I think if I look at the 2021, like the How to Fly, or also like the How to Live, the interesting thing is like that it's like, I mean, you basically, I mean, in this case you fly, but I mean, I know a lot of other games where you walk or you run, but you're kind of immersed into this like landscape, this kind of amazing, impressive landscape, which has also something to do with the technical possibilities, as you said, like with Toy Story or thing. I think the possibilities now are different, like are much bigger. You have like the tree moving in the wind and the water rippling, and you very much enjoy that. Like I know myself that enjoying that, and I think it's really interesting that you actually caught also this moment and the kind of, I don't say escapism, because I think it's that escapism is only a small part of it, because it's like it's more like the negative version of it, but that's the other side of it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it was self-care in a way. It was like
I totally understand.
trying to and part of that self-care was actually making the work, because like you're trapped in a space where, oh my god, am I even going to have an income like next month? This was very early days in the pandemic, and everything was up in the air, and people couldn't see, well, I couldn't see how it was all going to work out, and so it almost was like a release to have something just to like get lost into, to as a kind of meditative space to kind of center and re-emerge as something else. It was quite an intense period making it. It was not dissimilar to sort of Emmy creating a tank. It was sort of like, I often think of my videos like that, kind of building them up from lots of different elements and sort of putting them in and seeing how they work together, and then they sort of percolate and eventually it becomes a thing. But it's very, very process driven.
Just wanted, this is like a total change of topic now.
Okay.
wanted to mention it before, because we're talking about Emmy's videos again, that there's the Night of the Red Sky is part of like I don't know if you call it series, but like several videos, and I just wanted to mention the names because I think they like make very much sense. So there's Curse of the Red Sky, then we have the Lagoon. Emmy, can you help me here? Like the return,
like return to Neuronic Lagoon.
yeah.
And neuronic is a word that Ballard uses in his book. It's like a kind of made up word just to refer to the sort of like neural level experience of something. So yeah, it's like return to Neuronic Lagoon. Yeah, Curse of the Red Sky. I'm trying to think some of the other ones, but yeah, they're all, it's this sci-fi, the humor. There is that like kernel of humor, I hope, in them.
I totally enjoyed that. I have to say, I just kind of wanted to mention it. Kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, for us, this today's conversation was also important to bring this the science fiction elements in each of the works, and then also the satire and humorous part of it, or like a kind of not a very there's certain like kind of overlapping things in that sense. So that's why it was very important for us to bring three of you in this conversation. At the moment, I don't see any questions from the Facebook. So, and if you don't have any other questions, maybe we can slowly wrap up the conversation.
Yeah.
If you have any other things to comment at, then maybe. Thank you so much for your time and then participation, for your availability to join this conversation. And thank you, D21, for allowing us to have this exhibition in the space. Sentient Matter will be kept closed until 12th of December, but afterwards, hopefully, we will be open for the audience again. But we will have other online events in the future. The next one will be in December 12th. And then we will eventually update YouTube channel with further content featuring each artistic position that can be accessible online during this lockdown.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really good to talk to all of you.
Likewise.
Thank
Thanks for
you so
having me.
much. And yeah, as Tuche already said, we will keep you posted online on our website and on our social media about what is going to happen during the next time, the lockdown, or what's possible to see, or to see the exhibition live, or what else. Thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, enjoy Sunday evening, and greetings from Leipzig to everyone.
Mm.